Wealth Without Wall Street Tribe. So excited to introduce you, Mr. Bob LaChance. Bob, grateful to have you on today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Bob, you've got a storied history, both in sports and in investing, but I want to take you back to the moment. I think it was almost 20 years ago, probably to the date somewhere close. You had been playing hockey professionally for a long, long time, and that's coming to an end. And you're trying to figure out what are you going to do next. I think that relates to so many people right now who are considering leaving their career wherever they're at. I'd love to have you kind of just talk a little bit about some of the things that were going through your brain at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, this is going back to 2004, like you said. And I was playing in Europe. And just to take a little step back, I went to school for 4 years at Boston University, but I left 2 classes short before I got my degree, with the idea of I could always go back and get my degree. And, fast forward 20 years after that, what do you guys think I did? Think I went back to school? Never did.
No.
So that was the other interesting time. So now, 2004, I didn't have my degree, and I had to look at, what was going on. What was I going to do next? Because playing ice hockey for 8 years professionally, you're not sitting in a locker room talking about business, talking about how to make money. You're just, you're trying to get another contract to pay your bills, in essence, is what you're doing. So when I started getting towards the end of my career, I knew it was the end of my career because I didn't want to bring my family over to Europe, because I was playing in Europe. I think my last year I was in Switzerland, and it was either, uproot your family and start a life. And I already saw other individuals that I was playing with in their 40s, and they had their family there. And I was always thinking, what are these guys going to do to support their family when they go back to the States? Some were from Canada, some were from the United States. And I was always looking at that. I said, all right, now's the time I have to leave. But it was scary because, just like you said, there's a lot of individuals looking at, maybe they're doctors, maybe they're lawyers that are just tired with their profession. They say, you know what, I see a lot of changes going on in my industry. What can I do next? So for me personally, I looked at what are industries that have 0 barriers of entry. So the barriers of entry in real estate is nothing. You don't need a degree, so I didn't have to go back to school. But if you work hard, you can make money. And that's the thing that really, really appealed to me to real estate, was that the hours I put in, I know I could get a return on that. So for me, my mindset was the harder I work, I could control my outcome.
What's the most important resource that you have? If you really thought about this deeply, I think you'd come to the same conclusion that Joey and I did. It's time. In our newest book, Wealth Without Wall Street, the 3 steps to financial freedom through passive income, we talk about how are we tracking that time? What is the thing that we can do to get more of that time back?
That's right. If you've ever been listening to our podcast and thought, man, it would be amazing if I could take all the things that you guys have learned over the last 10 years and just summarize them, put them in some way to easily digest them and take action, that's what this book is all about. You're not going to want to miss it. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/new book and get your copy today. All right. So obviously you see the opportunity for what it is. What were the mental hurdles that you had to overcome to step into that, going from something so different? I mean, being a professional athlete to real estate, what were you trying to solve in order to make that move?
Well, for me, I was trying to figure out how I'm going to support my family. So that was, for me, that was very, very important, because we all have overhead. And I would always reverse engineer it, saying, all right, how much money? I have a mortgage at home. How much money do I need until I need to start making money in this new industry? So I kind of reverse engineered it. Back at that time, I think I needed about 10 grand a month. At the time, my wife was working. So obviously it was easier to jump off and jump into a new industry because I had somebody paying the bills at that point. So I knew I had my runway, which was probably about a year, 6 months to a year. So my runway was that. So I hit the ground running. I was door knocking, door to door to door, individuals that were behind on their mortgage looking to buy their house. And again, I knew nothing about the industry. So I was self-taught. We didn't have these podcasts like this. Literally I went on the internet and I bought a course about real estate, a thick course like this. And, I was self-taught, and I just hit the ground running. And then I, learned to build networks and things like that.
So you were looking at buying homes where people were behind on their mortgage. Is that the thing?
Yep. So I thought I was a rehabber. fix and flip guy, only because I grew up my father was a contractor, but he wasn't a fix and flip guy. He was hired by somebody else. But, through all the research I did, I thought I was a fix and flip guy. So my first deal was a fix and flip where I made 32 grand, which was phenomenal, but I had no systems, no processes. I didn't know anything. So I figured out, I have to somehow build a network. So I joined my local real estate investment association, met people through there, and then I kind of changed my path to fix and flip to then doing short sales, which are individuals who are behind on their mortgage. So it's pretty interesting. I was willing to jump in any industry that I could make money in just because I didn't understand the way business works back in the day.
So you said you thought you were a fix and flip. Is it only because your dad had that general contractor experience, and what made you change from that? Because there's so many people right now, they think that that's the way they're going to get into real estate. They've watched an HGTV show that, and they think that that's the path. So why was that not your path?
Well, I realized that you're literally working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're back and forth to Home Depot. So my first deal I bought the property, and I was back and forth to Home Depot probably, and this is no joke, probably 4 times a day. And, for those of you who have actually done a fix and flip at the beginning, you don't have any systems set up. You just don't know what you don't know. Also, my first deal, I actually was doing a lot of the work until I slipped off a ladder. I was literally ripping the roof. I slipped off the ladder, landed on my feet, and the ladder came by and hit my shins. And I'm like, all right, this is not for me. I got to start outsourcing this stuff. So I found contractors to do all the work. It worked out very well. I made 32 grand in 2 months, which was awesome. But I had no properties next to work on. So I was like, all right, I got to figure this game out because it just doesn't work that way.
So you had a totally Chevy Chase moment there where you fell off the house.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Okay, so you said you decided that was not it, and the next step was you got into a different area. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yep. So I went to my real estate association, and I saw speakers speak on what pre-foreclosures are, which are when the debt's too high, you negotiate the debt down to where you could buy it and then resell it for a profit. So I invested in that course, and then I talked to probably about 80% of the members, and I said, who is the best short sale guy, pre-foreclosure guy in Connecticut? And they all pointed to the one guy. I went up to him, and I said, his name's Pat Preaker. I said, Pat, you have no idea who I am. I'm looking to join a team. I'm not looking for a paycheck. I will earn my way, from ground up. And then we ended up being partners for 10 years. Fast forward today. His son works for me right now in my real estate company. So,
wow. So I want to make sure that I follow exactly what the strategy was. So on a short sale, you're negotiating the debt down in order to buy it for a profit, and you're immediately just reselling it. So there's no long-term hold here. There's no rental cash flow. This is still just flip without having to do the construction piece.
Correct. So there's a different strategy. And this is back in 2004. It was different the way business was done back in 2004 than it is now. Without getting too far into the weeds, we were able to buy it. Like if the debt was, let's say, 300, negotiate the debt down at 200, and then automatically resell it for, let's say, 220, 230 for 240. So you're talking about $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 profit just right off. You can't do it that way today. You could do it. You could still do it, but it's a little different the way it's done today. But those were quick. You could make money very, very quickly back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, et cetera, until they started changing the rules.
All right. So obviously the rules were the big hurdle that maybe made you change. Was there anything else about that model that you thought, man, I want to improve this some way. I want to do something different because of fill in the blank?
Yeah. So we know today's day and age, things change, and we have to always educate ourselves. I think it's very, very important. Podcasts like this, we have to stay ahead, educate ourselves. You start in real estate today, that can move you to buying and holding properties. That can move you to lending money, right? The real estate business there's so many different ways to make passive income but when I started though, I didn't understand any of that. Nor did I have the resources or capital to start doing that. Now I do. So now I do literally everything from wholesaling to fix and flip to lending to long-term passive income to building a portfolio. but that's not how it was when I started. Starting out, I didn't have a big influx of capital, so I had to literally boots on the ground and work extremely hard to start, building and learning. And again, I didn't have the education behind me either.
So you go through this kind of good 10-year run in the short sale world. What did you transition to after that when that model was no longer as good?
Yep. So during one of the things that I've always been aware of is things can change. It's almost like a three-legged stool. You need three different ways to make money. So I was just making money in that one area. And then my business partner and I started getting into the education world. So as we were doing short sales, we started working with a company down in Florida because we got a pretty good reputation for ourselves. We started posting online and things like that. And we ended up starting a coaching program with them. So we were running the back end of the coaching. So now we had not only our short sale business, but we had coaching revenue come in. So we were kind of ahead of the curve. And then we had buddies of ours here in Connecticut that came up to us, and they were just at the beginning of starting a education company as well. They said, hey, let's see if you guys want to partner with us. We never ran an education program, so that we jumped in with those guys as well. And that morphed to a very, very good sized company. And then on top of that, I also realized there was an opportunity to help students out. And I think we talked a little bit about this. You guys have virtual assistants, and I was looking for another opportunity for our student base, because think about this, a lot of us that want to jump into another industry that are employed full-time just don't have the time to actually accomplish those tasks. So when I was coaching, I was like, all right, is there a system? Is there a process? Is there something out there that could help our student base do the things that they need to do to be successful? So I got introduced to what a virtual assistant was. And I'm like, you know what? This could be a business here. So another light bulb went on. And back in 2014, I started my first virtual assistant company while flipping properties, while coaching. And then now it's a three-legged stool with filled.
Oh, that's 10 years ago. You're getting in the virtual assisting world. Now it's way more prevalent than it was then. Yeah. So that was, you're definitely breaking some barriers, if you will. What is the number one thing you see a real estate investor, someone who's trying to build a real estate investment business, what is the easiest thing that they can hand off to a virtual assistant?
Probably just following up. And because you think about this, there's a lot of different marketing out there, right? You could do direct mail, you could do online, you could do, cold calling, and there's different, things that you could do. It's outsourcing that part of it. And also branding is very, very important. So for any one of us who has a brand, so this podcast is an example. I'll send it to my virtual assistant. They'll cut it up and they'll send it on, Instagram. They'll send it on, Facebook. They do all of these things that I don't have to do. So they'll cut it up. So that's kind of branding as well. So I would say those two things would be the first thing to start with.
There was nothing worse than walking into class when you're in school and the teacher saying, pop quiz day. Why? Because you were unprepared. Are you unprepared, though, for financial freedom?
Don't be. Find out how close you are by taking our 30-second quiz at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/quiz.
So talk to me, Bob, about, I don't mean to totally transition, but I want to go back to the question about what happened after short sales. What was your next step in the real estate side of your business that you then started to say, okay, this is our new path?
Yep. So, obviously we know what happened in 09, 10, 11. So we really ramped up our short sale business at that point because, the market was depressed, however you want to do it, however you want to say it. And we just started doing more and more short sales for other people. So we were doing a lot ourselves, and then some of the rules started changing. So we created another business of doing it as a service. We're doing the service for real estate agents. We were doing a service for attorneys. So we created it more of a business that was serving other people rather than on the investment side. So that's what we started doing. We were doing some fix and flip at that time as well, and we were coaching. So, and then once the market kind of worked itself out, and that's when I started my virtual assistant company. So it went from short sales on that side of it to fix and flip short sales to service.
Now, talk about the kind of deals you've been doing for the last 5 to 10 years. Where's the sweet spot? Where's we're all looking for that avenue of where I should get in. listening to experts for the juice, right? So I don't have to go and do all of that work. Tell us where the sweet spot is. Where are you working in right now?
So we do both wholesale, where we can lock up a contract and then sell the rights of that contract. And we also do buy and holds right now. And going back, I wish, and this is some of the advice I would give to someone, especially who has access to capital, start buying rental properties today, because you're paying down the mortgage. There's a lot of benefits to tax. I know you guys cover all that, so I don't have to cover any of that. We sold a lot of our portfolio at the height right after COVID when everything shot up. We sold everything, and now we're restarting to buy. But I wish I could go back to 2010, 2011, and 12 when property values were literally, 10, 15% of what they are today. Like, I could have bought properties in New Britain, Connecticut for $20,000, and now they're selling for $330,000. I'm like, it blows my mind. But the thing that I wish, because at the time you're like, oh, I would never pay for that. It's way overpriced. Now we look at some of those properties today and say, oh, they're way overpriced. They're not way overpriced. You're cash flowing. You have a different mindset on it. Because my mindset today is way different than it was before. I'm like, you know what? Buy the asset. We know what happens over time, because before you know it, 20 years goes by just like that. And you could have 30, 40, 50, 60 properties in your portfolio.
Bob, that's the first time on this show ever. I mean, we've been doing the show for 7 years that somebody said they wish they wouldn't have sold properties, or that they wish they would have bought more before. That's a head scratcher there. Obviously being sarcastic, but here's the thing is, well, no, the reason I say that is not to bust your chops, because we've all done that. It's the person who's listening, as you're listening to this right now, and you're like, hey, I've never bought real estate outside of my primary residence, and I'm trying to think about what to do. You hear this over and over from these experts who've been doing this, who've done hundreds, and even in some situations, I think Bob's at close to 1,000 or more transactions, where they're saying the same thing, that I need to have held more properties. And we see the shortage right now of housing out there. If you're willing to get into the long-term rental game, if that's the play that fits your investor DNA, buying and holding these properties for cash flow, and then when you want chunky money, instead of selling it, you just refi out the cash. Like, that's where you can get the money out as time goes along. The price of real estate is going up. Why? Because our government is printing money like it's going out of style. That's creating all of these financial assets to keep rising in relationship to what the dollar is going down. So if you're listening to Bob and all these other experts and you're thinking about getting into the real estate space, follow the advice. Find these properties, start collecting them like watches, right? Start collecting these things over time. As long as they cash flow, as long as they have good parameters, you're not going to get yourself killed going to go look at one. Buy them and hold them over a period of time. Yep. All right. So Bob, thinking about that, right? So if there was any other advice you would have given your, 30-year-old self as you go all the way back to, 2004, what would be some other things that you would have told yourself that the person listening to you now could glean from?
Real estate is a long game. And I think that's very, very important. I didn't realize that, because once you get into the game, being an ex-athlete, you always want something today, right? It's you want to feel like you accomplished something. But I would tell myself that this is the long game. Think 5 years ahead, think 10 years ahead, think 15 years ahead. It's very difficult to do. Trust me, it's very, very difficult to do, because I know if you're listening to this, we're all at different ages. When you're 20 years old, you think different. When you're 30 years old, you think different. When you're 40, now I'm 50. I just turned 50 this year. You just think different. You say, okay, I need money today. You really don't need money today. You need money to take care of yourself in the future. My dad now is 78 years old. He doesn't need as much money as he needed when he was 50. So I just look at things a lot differently to say, hey, look, why are you doing this? Are you building this for what? Is it cash flow to make you feel secure? Or are you building this to pass it on to, let's say, your kids, so, you could get them into the game? There's always different reasons why we do things when we get older. But those are two of the things that I would touch upon.
So interesting, like the consistency, Russ, that we hear on the show, right? There is no get rich quick scheme. And I think when people, they hear our show, they say wealth without Wall Street. Oh, what do you invest in? It's like the immediate thing. People want to know what what do I do? But to your point, there's a game that has to be played that's very long term, and the other thing I'll glean from what you said is it's cash flow driven, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about always just getting something immediately today. These big chunks, these chunky money, as Russ said earlier. What would you say about? I'm gonna bring up the virtual assistants thing now because. Okay. The other part of what I think we hear is that you have to treat it like a business, and I think people that get into real estate as a hobby or as like just a quick, like a quick buck, they don't see it that way. How would you share like your knowledge around the virtual assistant world to maybe expand someone's mind about what's possible in treating this like a business?
Yeah, I think I could touch upon that a little bit, but I just want to, you said something earlier that was important. I think we got to look at things, look at what the end result is for many of us is secure, right? And I said that at the beginning is when we're looking at transition or, we're not happy in what we're doing today. And, we're looking at watching HGTV, we're looking at all of these exciting things in real estate because real estate is very exciting. It's boring, but it's very exciting. You got to look at the passive income that you guys teach on, which is, I absolutely love it because it's true. What I would do is reverse engineer everything. I would say, all right, what do I need, right? If you're thinking about leaving your current role or your current job, what do you need coming in per month for cash flow, right? So let's say you're a doctor, you're making $500,000, you're making $1 million. Start looking at assets like Russ, you were touching upon. You could pull stuff off the MLS right now. That's listed on the multiple listing service. And if you look at it as cash flow, you could buy properties that are cash flowing today because we're doing it. And let's say you're making that much money, you could reverse engineer if you need 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month, reverse engineer what a 20% down payment would be or a 25% down payment is. That'll give you that much money coming in. And it'll be a very easy or a lot easier transition for you to jump into real estate. But you got to start today on the cash flow you guys are talking about. So I know I went off on a tangent, but I think that's very, very important because I would love to go back and tell myself that at the beginning.
Well, before you go to this VA question that Joey asked, when we're still in this real estate, what have you learned are the best ways to get access to money, right? Because I know you mentioned early on you didn't have any of your own. And we talk about that there's 5 ways to do a deal, and we call it the redneck motor. It's money, opportunity, time, experience, and relationship. But you don't need all 5 personally. You just have to acquire them from somebody else. So for the person that maybe is closer in the position where you were when you were getting out of the hockey world and didn't have your own money, but you've learned over time, there's probably good ways to be able to get access to money. What are some of those ways that I can learn from your experience?
Yeah, I would say time and relationships. So I talked to an ex-player that lives in Canada, and he's doing Airbnbs up in the Finger Lakes area. And we just had this conversation because he just retired. He's 32 years old. And he was looking at how he's going to expand. And we had that conversation because he has access to some capital from buddies that are now playing in Russia. So, and he's managing the Airbnb. So to this example, my buddy Justin has time. His buddy over that's playing hockey has the resource of money. So I said, all right, now you guys could partner, do 50-50. You guys buy a property, use his money for the down payment. You guys own it 50-50. Use your time, which is your management company, to then obviously rent out the Airbnb. So to that example, that would be a time and relationship kind of play. And I think anyone starting out, you either have one or two things. You either have money or time. Those are the two kind of resources we can look at.
Well, and it's so true. In light of that, I want to kind of bring it back to the virtual assistant conversation, because to me, when you think about a business, you are always considering time, because that is the most precious asset that we have. How do you then build out this as a business, in your opinion?
So you mean at real estate as a business?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would start out with one property. And then what happens is you look at one property, you're managing that one property. So now we are now a property management company, right? We're an accounting firm. We're all of those things, right? And we have to also rent out the property. So now you're dealing with tenants. So you look at it and pretend you're a property management company. It starts with one property. And then you add on another, then you add on another. And while you actually start, obviously you could go on YouTube, you could go on this podcast and look at different things, but you'll learn at one property at a time. So I would just look at that as pretend you have 100 properties. Doesn't matter, because that one property, then when you start adding, it's going to be the same system and process that you actually have for that one property. And once you have that foundation built, you could always pile on top of it because it's easier to build. You build that foundation below, you could always add on. The reason why I'm saying that is because we did the exact thing. And we built the foundation of what that looks like. And then we started adding houses on top.
All right, Tribe, you've got to hear from another expert, someone who started out, had no experience in this space, showed you how to go and get experiences. Go find the expert in your area. Figure out how you can work with them, right? You can learn along the way. That can create a major opportunity as a different Bob. He's able to get a 10-year runway with this person where they built a partnership, and obviously it's led to many, many other things along the way. But also that time and relationship allows you to get access to cash. And as you learn how to do these deals, opportunities always find cash. So learn how to be a value add to the world, and money will find you. Bob, if people want to find you, where would you send them?
Sure, you can just go to our website, which is Riva Global, REVAglobal.com. You can always send me an email at bob@rivaglobal.com if you have any questions. I'll let me know, and obviously through you guys.
All right, Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, Tribe, thank you so much for listening. Found value. Take a screenshot of this and just tag us somewhere so that we know we can create more of this. And go find Bob at Riva. That's REVAglobal.com. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.